Hi friends, I'm LJ Jarvis, and welcome back to Lewis Jarvis Show. So with Warhammer Plus just around the corner, I want to have a little discussion with you guys on a different kind of Warhammer show. Something that I don't believe will be on Warhammer Plus, but it was something that was talked about almost a year ago, that being the question of Eisenhorn show. Now, by the time I'm doing this video, there hasn't been any new updates on the position on how they're going to do this show. We don't know what kind of story they're telling. We don't know what story they're converting. And with all honesty, there's not much to go on. Now, when I did my video talking about the news, I had no experience with Eisenhorn as a character. Because, I've never read any of his books, but I did know of him. And I did know he was a famous Warhammer character within Black Library. However, recently, I actually read the first book, Jonas. And now that I have got the experience with the character, and now that I've experienced what his story is, or in this case, the first book, I want to go back on the topic. I want to open up another discussion. The discussion of how can they do this? How can they take the first book, Jonas, and turn that into a good TV show? Or most likely it's going to be the first book. But again, we don't know how they're doing this. But let's say hypothetically, let's say it is the first book. How can they do this? Well, first things first, I think one of the things that would matter on the success on the show, and this is just my opinion at the end, is that it's a question of money. Because come on, let's be honest here. 40K is quite the expensive setting. And I think it's because of this that it was a good decision that they chose Eisenhorn to be the one to get his own show. If they were to take like any other story, or maybe any other Den Abnett book, like say First and Only, I think the budget would be just way too demanding for any sort of studio. Because something like this has happened before, where they had a really good script for a TV show, yet it just never went to production simply because the budget was way too demanding. For instance, they were going to make a TV show on The Thing, a sequel series, yet it never went to production because the budget was just too big. And because they wanted to use practical effects and not use CGI, it just never went anywhere. Unfortunately, we never got what looked to be a very cool TV show. Okay, 40K is expensive, but that doesn't mean it can't get a TV show. It doesn't mean that. I mean, if stories like Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time can get their own shows, then why not 40K? Which is why I still think it's a good idea that they chose Eisenhorn to get his show. Because at the end, his story is a detective kind of story, not something like a huge trench warfare opera like First and Only is. But back on the budget question, how can they do this? Well, I think to be on the safe side, they could maybe turn the season into 2. Not like season 1 and season 2, but more like season 1 and season 1.5. If they had a limited budget for the first half of season 1, they can use it to do what they can to tell a story. They can probably tell the same story that is told in the book with Eisenhorn and his gang, up to the point where they're fighting in the gladiatorial arena of House Claw. They can probably still tell this story. But okay, there might be a few instances where they remove some stuff from the book for the TV show. Of course, something like that is inevitable. It's just something that happens, and it's not new at all. We see this plenty of times, and most of the time it doesn't ruin the story. But like I've said before, most likely they can tell the same story, and most likely they can keep most of the stuff from that book up to that point for this TV show. They can probably still do this. Now for season 1.5, I think if the first half of season 1 was successful enough, and if the studio decided to give the production team even more money that they can use for the show, I think it's here that we can start to see even more cool stuff, where they can probably take more stuff from the book and bring to the TV show, now that they have a bigger budget to work on. And maybe we can expect things like miniature battles in the show that we see within a book. They can probably do this with the bigger budget. Which leads me into asking this question. The question of Space Marines. Bear with me. Xenos is not a Space Marine story. Yet we do get to see Space Marines. More specifically, we see Space Marines of the Death Watch and the Emperor's Children. It really depends on how are they going to do Space Marines. If they're going to do costumes for them, or if they're going to turn them into CGI graphics. We do know that it is possible to do Space Marine cosplay, life size, and have it look like a Space Marine and walk how a Space Marine would. It's possible. Yet again, it could be expensive. So even with a bigger budget, I think they would have to maybe cut out Space Marines, or at least Space Marines from the Death Watch. If there was something that they can remove that wouldn't really impact the story all that much, in my point of view, it would be the Death Watch. They play a role in the story, yes. Yeah, I think if we were to not have them, I don't think much would be changed. One of those inevitable changes that a production team would do if they were to convert a story from the book for the TV show or movie. Again, stuff like this happens all the time, and if they were to do something like this for Eisenhorn's show, then maybe it should be the Death Watch. It would be cool to see like squads of Death Watch Space Marines, but again, if they don't have that big of a budget, and if they had to remove something from the book, I don't think much would be lost if they were to just simply write out the Death Watch. But that is my point of view, at least. But that doesn't mean we can't have Space Marines. But what do I mean by this? Well, for the show, especially for the first half of Season 1, what they could do is that when Eisenhorn and his team land on a planet of Gudrun, maybe we can see stuff like statues and stained glass windows of Space Marines to show the audience that within the universe of 40K, there's these things called Space Marines, that they're depicted as these sort of angelic warriors and all that, where we can have Space Marines without necessarily having physical Space Marines within the show. I think that would be the smart idea on doing this. But here's the thing. The Death Watch aren't the only Space Marines that we see. Because of course, within the book, we also see the Emperor's Children in the story. And not just that, we actually see an Emperor's Children character, the character of Mandragore. And I think for here, if they were to have one Space Marine, either one CGI or one practical effects Space Marine, I think they can do Mandragore. Because he is the sort of tank character within the Chaos operation, I think we can have him in the show. We can have him to tell the audience that this is not just a operation of Chaos cultists, but rather this has also involved the fallen Space Marines. And with all the imagery and statues that we see from the first half of Season 1, we can use a character like Mandragore to show the audience that in the universe of 40K, not only are there angels, but there are fallen angels, angels of the Emperor, and angels of Chaos. I think we can use Mandragore to represent this. So again, if they were to have one Space Marine, why not use it on a character that serves a role in the story? But that's my point of view, at least. Other than the question of budget, how to do the season, and how they can do something like Space Marines, there's not really much for me to say. Again, we don't know the kind of story they're telling. We don't know what the position is for the show. We don't know when it's coming out. And there's not even so much as photos on how the show is going to look. This was just me merely going back on the discussion after having the experience with Eisenhorn. At the end of it all, though, I'd like to hear your ideas in the comments down below. What do you think of my ideas on how they can do the show? Are there any particular ideas that you have in mind on how they can do this? I would love to hear about them in the comments down below. And with all said and done, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all again next week with a brand new video. Have a good day, everyone. And if you enjoyed this video and you would like to subscribe, then make sure to activate the bell notification button so you'll never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you again soon. Have a good one.